EA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Starting at pole position is Lightning McQueen, and Bobby Swift would start to his outside. Row 2 has Tony Gasswert, and the car currently second in points, Kevin Carvick. Row 3 has Jeff Gorvette, two-time Piston Cup champion, and Denny Carlin to his outside. Row 4 has Jimmy Cables, who is currently in the top 20 in points, and Brick Yardley, who also is in the top 20. Row 5 has the Bush Tire Brothers, please don't cause any trouble. Row 6 has Carl Edwards and Clint Bokar to his outside. I wonder what he's going to do. Row 7 has Greg People, who's surprising us in recent races, and Cal Weathers to his outside. Row 8 has two juniors, Mike Yankee Jr. and Dale Earnhardt Jr., whose fathers raced in the 1980s. Row 9 has Casey Corner and Brad Karslowski to his outside. I wonder what they're going to do. Row 10 has the jumper Jeff Burnton and Mark Carton, who is very nice to other cars. Row 11 has the Rocket Ryan Newcar and Juan Pablo Montoya, who won his first race this season. Row 12 has Martin Carrix Jr. and Phil Tankson, who are competing for a top 20 spot. Row 13 has Jamie McCarry and Todd Marcus to his outside. Row 14 has Moray Clutchburn, who has made quite a lot of starts in this competition, and Joey Lagirno. Row 15 has Brick Hicks and Darren Leadfoot, who promised to lead laps this race. Row 16 has Speedy Comet. I wonder if he'll be speedy, and Chip Gearings to his outside. Row 17 has Matt Karzeth, the 2003 Piston Cup champion, and T.G. Castlenut. Row 18 has Rex Revler and Reb Meeker, who both missed at least one race this season. Row 19 has two Davids, David Raycar and David Rudikar. I wonder who'll do better. Row 20 has Ernie Gearson, who's been racing since 1973, before Jack DePost was even born. Row 21 has Dud Throttleman and Joe Brakecheck to his outside. And starting in 43rd is Mike Splatlopper, making his first start this season. These 7 cars, among many others, failed to qualify for this race. Lightning McQueen would lead for the first 20 laps of this race before he'd lose the lead. Oh. Joey Lagirno would be 35th as of lap 7 when he wrecks Ernie Gearson. Why? Denny Carlin would take the lead on lap 20 and lead for 6 laps before Darren Leadfoot would take the lead for himself, leading for 2 laps before Denny Carlin would be back in the lead. He'd lead until lap 35, where Phil Tankson would take the lead from him. He'd lead for 3 laps before Lightning McQueen would of course be back in the lead, leading until lap 55, where Tony Gasswert would take the lead. He'd lead for 9 laps before Lightning McQueen, as usual, is back in the lead, leading all the way until lap 82, Darren Leadfoot's number, and he'd lead until lap 109. Matt Karzeth would be second as of lap 109, but he would be beaten to the lead by Jimmy Cables, who would lead for just 2 laps before Jeff Gorvette would take the lead for himself. He'd lead for 13 laps before he'd lose the lead to Darren Leadfoot, who would lead for 6 more laps before lap 129, where Kyle Busch Tire would take the lead until lap 135. On lap 135, Lightning McQueen would retake the lead. He'd lead for 2 laps before, of course, Darren Leadfoot would take the lead, leading until lap 141, where Bobby Swift would take the lead from him. He'd lead for 3 laps before Brick Yardley would take the lead from him. He'd lead all the way until lap 160, where of course Lightning McQueen would take the lead from Brick Yardley, and lead for 9 laps before Tony Gasswert would once again take the lead, leading until lap 173, where Denny Carlin would take the lead from him. He'd lead for 3 laps before his teammate Kyle Busch Tire would overtake him for the lead, leading until lap 183, where Lightning McQueen would of course retake the lead. 11 laps later, Phil Tankson would take the lead from Lightning McQueen off of pit cycles. After pit cycles are done, Darren Leadfoot would take the lead and lead for 10 laps before Denny Carlin would retake the lead for himself, leading until lap 211, where Brick Yardley would retake the lead, leading until lap 214 for 3 laps before Cal Weathers would take the lead for himself, leading for 2 laps before Kyle Busch Tire would take the lead once again. But he would be pushed into the wall by Todd Marcus, who would lead for 9 laps before Tony Gasworth would once again retake the lead, leading until lap 234, where Greg Beeple would take the lead from him. He'd lead for 2 laps before Darren Leadfoot would once again take the lead, leading until lap 249, where Denny Carlin would once again take the lead. He'd lead until lap 264, but 10 laps earlier, Joey Logano would be 10th, and then he'd wreck Mike Splatloper, David Rudikar, Chip Gearings, David Raycar, Joe Brakecheck, and put Maury Clutchburn, Brick Hicks, Speedy Comet, Casey Corner, Doug Throttleman, Cal Weathers, and Jack DePost down 1 lap. Why, you mean orange car? Tony Gasworth would take the lead on lap 264 and lead until lap 279, where Brick Yardley would take the lead from him. He'd lead until lap 284, where Lightning McQueen would retake the lead. He'd lead for 4 laps before Mark Carton would take the lead off of pit cycles. But on lap 289, his teammate Jeff Gorvette would take the lead from him. He'd lead until lap 295, where Lightning McQueen would once again retake the lead, leading for 8 laps before Phil Tankson would be 26th as of lap 303. Who does he wreck? Joey Logano! Hooray! Doug Throttleman would get back on the lead lap on lap 303. Hooray! And Darren Leadfoot would take the lead for himself on lap 303. He would keep the lead for 40 laps. But what happens? Jack DePost would get back on the lead lap on lap 306. And 1 lap later, Cal Weathers would get back on the lead lap on lap 307. Hooray! Tony Gasworth would finally take the lead from Darren Leadfoot on lap 343, but on lap 356, Bobby Swift would retake the lead. He'd lead for 3 laps before, of course, Lightning McQueen retakes the lead. He would lead until lap 362, where Brick Yardley would once again take the lead. He'd lead for 4 laps before Tony Gasworth would take the lead for himself once again. But on lap 371, Jimmy Cables would take the lead once again. He would lead for 4 laps before Brick Yardley would take the lead on lap 375. And with 2 to go, Tony Gasworth would take the lead. And he would take the checkered flag to win the 2010 Tank Coat 400. Brick Yardley would finish 2nd this race. Lightning McQueen finished 3rd, Matt Karseth 4th, and Bobby Swift rounding out the top 5. And here is the top 20 of the race, with Kurt Busch-Tire, Jimmy Cables, Darren Leadfoot, Carl Edwards, and Greg Beeple rounding out the top 10. Clint Bokar, who led no laps this race, would finish 11th this race. And here is the rest of the top 20. At least Phil Tankson is present. And the last car to finish in the top 20 is Todd Marcus. And here is the rest of the field, where Kyle Busch-Tire finishes 21st. And, of course, Doug Throttleman and Cal Weathers got back onto the lead lap, with Cal Weathers being the last car to finish on the lead lap. Wait, Cal Weathers was the last one to finish on the lead lap? When does this happen? But Jack DePost also got back on the lead lap. And here is the top 20 in points, where Lightning McQueen leads by over 800 points! How does any car lead by that many points? At least the Busch-Tire brothers didn't cause any trouble, unlike Joey Logano, who is quite far from finishing in the top 20.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
How is Lightning McQueen this dominant? I know he didn't win the race, but if you look at the point standings, Lightning McQueen is over 800 points ahead of Kevin Harvick in 2nd. And if you go down to 3rd, Lightning McQueen is over 1,000 points ahead of Denny Carlin in 3rd. How is anyone supposed to catch up to that. And the next race, the 32nd race of the 2010 Piston Cup season, will hopefully be coming out tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then a day soon after. Something that should be happening sooner than the upload of my next video is the end of the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. The Ukrainian people just want to live in peace and have freedom. And also, it is getting colder in the northern hemisphere, where Ukraine and Russia are located. Many Ukrainians are in the dark and in the cold because of attacks on their power plants. But do you know who ordered these attacks? The tyrant and bully Vladimir Putin. Why does he need to start an unjustified war on Ukraine? You already have enough land of your own! He's not just bullying Ukrainians, but he is also bullying Russians into fighting in this war. And we at the hashtag KBullets YouTube channel will continue to stand with Ukraine. Slava Ukrainie! Heroyam slava! Nechai Shvitsye daruється Україні перемога!